After the question round ends and other players collect their cards, the player can use their special cards, if they possess any, and start building as many words and word colonies as they want, or can, as well as expand or conquer words, develop super colonies, and initiate decolonizations. Let's dive in. Building a word. Single words will be built horizontally by partially overlapping the cards from left to right so that the letters are visible. For example, the player who built the word flow will now have a total score of 6 points and will move their pawn 6 steps forward on the scoreboard. 2 or more players can occupy the same position on the board. In this case, pawns will overlap in the same position. Only English words are valid. Players may use a mutually accepted dictionary if needed. Letter cards can be used to build new words, whether the card was previously used to read a question in a previous round or not. Once cards are used to build a word and placed on the table, they cannot be picked up or changed. Cards in hand that have not yet been used to build a word will not count toward the score. Expanding a word. Words can be expanded by adding additional letters to the end of the original word to build new words with new meanings. Expanding a word can be done by both the holder of the word and also other players on their turn, earning points for the newly added letters. For example, the player who adds the new letters ERS to expand the word flow collects 3 points and moves their pawn 3 steps forward on the scoreboard. The word flowers will still belong to the player who originally built the word flow, but they will not receive the additional 3 points for the newly added letters. Only the player who added the letters E, R, and S will receive the 3 points. Keep in mind that during their turn, players can even expand words and colonies held by other players, but only if they have already built at least one word of their own on the table and their pawn is on the scoreboard. Inserting letter cards at the beginning of the word is not allowed. Building words using black cards. The player can choose to use one or more black cards to build words. After building the word, they calculate the total score of all letters used. For example, the player who built the word wonder will now have a total score of 5 points and will move their pawn 5 steps forward on the scoreboard. The total score will be calculated taking into account the negative scores of the black cards as well, such as the letter R in this case, which has a value of -1 point. Conquering a word. On their turn, each player can build as many individual words as they wish. However, they must keep in mind that single words can be conquered and drawn into a foreign colony, risking the loss of points. A player may conquer a single word held by another player by expanding the word, or by building a new higher-scoring word over it. Let's see some examples. Conquering by expanding the word. If the player expands the existing single word by adding new letters with a higher total score. For example, the player who expands the word win, worth 4 points, originally created by another player by adding the letters E-maker, worth 9 points, will conquer the word win and gain the 4 points from the other player. The player who owns the new word winemaker, worth 13 points, will move their pawn forward 13 steps on the scoreboard, while the player who lost the word win, worth 4 points, will lose the 4 points and move their pawn backward 4 steps. Conquering by building a new word over it. If the player builds a higher scoring word over the original existing word, for example, the player who built the word napkin on top of the word win, worth 4 points, held by another player, by adding the letters apkin for a total value of 8 points, will conquer the entire word win by building their own 2-word colony and collect the 4 points from the player who originally owned the word win. They will move their pawn 12 steps forward on the scoreboard. The player who lost the word win will lose 4 points and move their pawn 4 steps backward on the scoreboard. Building a word colony. A word colony is formed when a word is built perpendicularly on top of another single word. The new word must begin with the last letter of the previous word. A word colony consists of at least 2 connected words. Following our example, a new word could be built horizontally, perpendicular to the word napkin, starting with the letter N at the end of the word. The player has chosen to build the word next, for which they will receive the corresponding score of the E, X, and T letters, worth 5 points, and will move the pawn 5 steps forward on the scoreboard. Next, if another player wants to build a new word in the same colony, the same rule applies. They can build perpendicular to the last word built in that colony using the last letter, in this case the letter T, to start a new word vertically. The new word try has been created vertically by adding the R and Y letters with a total value of 3 points. The player will move forward on the board 3 steps. Words that are already part of a colony cannot be conquered by another player. The colony is protected, but hey, remember, after building an individual word, the player may immediately develop it into a word colony in the same round. They may also build other single words if they choose and have the opportunity. In a word colony, new words will always be built on top of those already on the table. Any player may build as many words as they wish during their turn in any colony they choose, both their own and those owned by other players. Within the same colony, unique words will be allowed only, without repeating an existing word. Developing super colonies. When a player manages to develop a word colony to a minimum of 5 words, it becomes a super colony, and the player receives 5 extra points for achieving this. On their turn, players will announce that they have developed a super colony and then move their pawn 5 positions forward on the scoreboard. The game may continue, with additional words being added to and further developed within this super colony. In our example, the colony built on the word win became a super colony containing 5 words, 3 horizontally, win, next, and yank, and 2 vertically, napkin, and try. The player who develops a super colony will receive an additional 5 points, regardless of whether it was built entirely by them or if other players contributed to its development. On their turn, players can develop multiple super colonies and subsequently build additional new words in the same round if desired. Decolonization. If a super colony reaches or exceeds 10 words, the player who owns it may decolonize, doubling the total score of the first word built in that super colony. When a player decides to make a decolonization, they will keep unfolded on the table only the last word built in that super colony, and the remaining words, whether 9 or more words, will be gathered and placed in a separate deck of cards. The deck of gathered cards will still be owned by the player, but they cannot be reused in this game. They will be placed next to the remaining word on the table as a reminder that a decolonization has been performed at that location. In our example, the score of the entire word win will double. From 4 points for the letters W, I, and N, it will now be worth 8 points. The player holding this super colony will move the pawn 4 steps forward on the scoreboard. The word kept on the table can still be used by the player, with the possibility of developing it into a new word colony in the same round if they choose. This word cannot be conquered by another player. Decolonization is optional and can only be performed on the turn of the player who owns the super colony of at least 10 words after they finish the question round. For those looking to elevate their gameplay for more accurate gaming experiences, feel free to explore the Words Aloud and glossary sections on our official website. And don't forget to add to your collection all word colony expansions and gather all your loved ones for a game. Join our colony at wordcolony.com for more tips and updates.